Welcome back to This Book Belongs to Pam. October has come and gone, which means it's time to wrap up all of the books that I read last month. First things first, let's do my Storygraph stats. I have missed doing these stats because I didn't do it for the last 6 months. So yeah, let's just dive right into it. In October, I read a total of 8 books across 2,394 pages and 9.97 hours. So yes, I did have an audiobook read for last month, which is something that's quite new to me. I'm still dipping my toes in the audiobook world, but I'm trying to incorporate it into my reading. Last month, I read mostly mysterious and adventurous books, which is not a surprise for me because I do like mysteries, I do like fantasy, so I'm not surprised. In terms of how consistent I was in reading every single day, the first half of the month I really wasn't reading, but as you can see, I did try to read here and there during the first week of October, but then got into a reading slump. It was only the 17th of the month where I picked things back up, and I actually listened to an audiobook during those time. I wasn't in the mood to read anything, but I want a story, so I thought, why not try an audiobook? And I think it worked because since that day, I have read a lot. Lastly, for my star ratings, my average rating for this month is 3.66 stars, which is the usual. It's always in the 3.5 something mark. By the way, if I'm sniffling and if my nose is getting red, it's because I am having an allergic reaction to dust and stuff. I like dusted today, so that is why. Just ignore that. Let's move on to the books that I read for October. First book I read is Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Ames. So this is a fantasy novel. This book was actually recommended to me by Pam from Pam Shenanigans, and this one is actually her copy, so she lent it to me. It has all of her tabs. It was quite fun to see what she was tabbing and see if I kind of relate to the stuff that she tabbed. So this is her copy, and thank you, Pam, for lending me your book. I actually read it for the Autumn Equinox of Magical Readathon because I needed to read a book with a shield on the cover. Here you go. Yeah, so what is Kings of the Wild all about? We are following Clay Cooper. He is a 10-year retired mercenary from this legendary band, which is a group of mercenaries called Saga. One night, his old bandmate knocks on his door with an impossible mission that pretty much requires getting the band back together. That is all you need to know, really. This book was ridiculously laugh out loud funny. Like, I found myself closing the book to have a good laugh because the things that they say here can be quite ridiculous. The plotline is very much traditional quest journey through this dangerous forest filled with monsters and enemies, and it's definitely cliche, but it was a great backdrop for all of the character stories and interactions that we get in this book. Every single member of the band, there's 5 of them, has a distinct personality and like a set of quirks that play so well into the actual story. So it's not just there just so they can be quirky and funny, but it actually played a part in how the story progressed and how the relationships were built around them. Honestly, I was initially intimidated because if you look at this cover, it makes you think, oh, this is this medieval, traditional, high fantasy. But I'm telling you, Kings of the Wild was so easy to read. It was definitely unputdownable and genuinely it was just so funny. I give this 5 stars, which was, I don't give a lot of 5 stars, especially this year, but this definitely 5-star read. So that is Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Ames. The next book that I read, I actually listened to as an audiobook. I listened to Locked Every Door by Riley Sager. This is a mystery slash thriller because, you know, Riley Sager. Jules, our main girl, she lost her job. She found out that her fiance or boyfriend was cheating on her. Pretty much she got kicked out, or she walked away from their apartment that they're sharing. She hit rock bottom. While job hunting, she saw an ad for apartment sitting, and the apartment is in this historic, grand, gothic building called The Bartholomew, and it pays well. I think it's like $1,000 per week, and she gets to live in like a rich people house, so it was kind of like a no-brainer for her. But the catch is you can't have people over, you have to spend every single night in the house, and you can't like talk or mingle with other residents who are like rich and famous people as well. Once you started living there, things start to get a little creepy. There seems to be something sinister, something paranormal happening, and our girl Jules is trying to figure it all out. I think the setting is pristine. Like, I really enjoyed all of the gothic imagery with all of the gargoyles and the patterned wallpaper. There's like this old school elevators and the dumbwaiter in the apartment. So the whole description of the apartment and the building itself, I really ate it up. Jules though, our main girl, she is annoying to say the least. I don't know, I just found her so annoying. Maybe the story needed her to be somewhat illogical and, I don't know, just make generally dumb decisions for the plot to move on, but she annoyed me so much. I did not care at all what happened to her because I was so annoyed. The plot twist was good, kind of predictable. I did see it coming. I think some of the way the clues were introduced so that Jules could figure out what was happening to the Bartholomew was kind of sloppy, a little bit too convenient. It did feel quite rushed, especially towards the end. There was a point there where I'm not gonna spoil anything, but basically there was this long monologue of just someone explaining every single thing, that this is what we're actually doing here, and this is why you're here, and you can't do anything about it, blah 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 blah. And I don't know, I didn't like that part. After 2 Riley Sager books, because I also read The Final Girls, I think he's really good at setting the scene and creating this atmosphere, but in my opinion he always falls a little bit short in executing the plot. I don't know if I'm gonna pick up any more Riley Sager books unless it's highly recommended by anyone or if the premise is super intriguing to me. But yeah, that is my review of Lock Every Door. I gave this 3.25 stars. The next book I read is The Devotion of Suspect X by Keigo Higashino. This is a crime mystery thriller book. What is this about? Yasuko is a divorced single mother who escaped from an abusive ex-husband. One day, the ex-husband shows up and essentially he threatens her because he still wanted to be with Yasuko, mostly because Yasuko has work and this ex-husband has no work and no money, blah blah blah. The situation goes downhill pretty fast and ended up with Yasuko's ex-husband dead in her apartment. Her next door neighbor, who is this reclusive math prodigy and high school teacher, offers to help her cover up the death, but she has to follow his instructions to a T. That premise was super interesting to me, but honestly this title just really got me, and I like how we are in the perspective of, I guess, the killer in this story. This is what I would classify as like a slow burn thriller, if that is a thing. Especially because you already know who the killer is. It's just a matter of whether or not they can cover up their tracks as the detectives try to figure out what is going on. It felt like this chess game where each play is being unveiled, and as you get further and further into the story, you are presented with this super small details that might seem insignificant at the time, but they actually end up being a crucial part of the whole scheme. I live for this kind of intricate setup and plotting. I just enjoy those like small clues that later on would make a lot more sense. There's also a lot of reference to mathematical concepts and theories, which honestly I enjoyed. This is probably the only time I ever get to benefit from my math degree from university. I guess my only gripe with this book is that Yasuko is written so one-dimensionally. Maybe it's a product of its time. When was this written? I think it was written in the early 2000s or like 2005, so definitely a product of its time. The female characters are so one-dimensional. I think Higashino could have gone so much more in depth with Yasuko, especially because of this whole very stressful situation that she found herself in. It's incredibly stressful dealing with this dead body, and I feel like we didn't get to see a lot of her psyche and how she's coping with all of it. The plot twist in this book completely blindsided me. I thought I had it figured out, but nope. I was not super off, but I definitely did not see it coming, but it did make sense. So I gave this book 4.5 stars, and that is Devotion of Suspect X by Keigo Higashino. The next book that I read is The Play by L. Kennedy. You all know it. This is a sports romance. It is the third book in the Briar U series, and this time we are following Hunter Davenport. He is the new captain of the Briar U hockey team, and Demi, who is an aspiring therapist slash psychiatrist. So something happened at the end of The Risk, which is the second book, and because of that, Hunter is on this self-imposed celibacy, and he wants to just focus on hockey, and girls are just a little bit too much of a distraction for this young man. In one of his classes, he gets partnered up with Demi on a project where Hunter has to pretend to be a patient with a mental health condition, and Demi has to pretend as a therapist, conduct sessions, and diagnose Hunter. I don't know how surface level, I enjoyed this one a lot more than the previous book because there are certain elements, certain character dynamics that is quite different from the other off-campus and Briar U books. Sometimes the books feel a bit repetitive, but this one was a little bit different, which is quite good. Demi being in like a long-term relationship, and both of them actually starting out as friends rather than the usual hooking up, thinking that it's the best hookup of your life, so you want to see them again. That's the usual plot line for a lot of L. Kennedy's books, so I'm really liking that this one started from actual friendship. There's this whole bit throughout the book where the hockey team is taking care of a boiled egg as like a pet. Like they have like feeding schedule, bathing, it's a whole thing, and I found it like stupidly funny. So there's that. There is an attempt, as you may have guessed in the synopsis, there is an attempt to talk about mental health in this book, but I do think that the representation of the mental health problems that they discuss in the book felt quite caricature-ish. Definitely not as nuanced as it should probably be. The depictions of the mental health problems felt a little bit sensationalized, so that's one thing that I didn't like about the book, so I gave this one 3 stars. That is The Play by L. Kennedy. The next book that I read is Shanghai Immortal by A.Y. Chow. This is the fairyloot special edition, and it is gorgeous. It stars our main girl, Jing. She is a half vampire, half fox spirit, and in Chinese folklore, I think fox spirits are supposedly this very elegant, very seductive, they're part of like this court structure kind of thing. But because Jing is half vampire, she was effectively ostracized by her kin. She was bullied. She didn't feel like she belonged with all of the other fox spirits. And of course, she rebelled. She just did things her own way. She's tomboyish. She likes fighting. She hates the whole court speak. She hates dressing up. You know the drill. That whole thing. She was actually exchanged by her mother to the King of Hell for this, I don't know, precious mythical thing called the Dragon Pearl. One day, our girl Jing overhears that the court of the fox spirits are plotting to steal said Dragon Pearl. So now she's trying to uncover the plot, and she basically wants to expose them to sort of get revenge a bit. What can I say about this book? Honestly, this book put me in a bit of a reading slump. I started this book in July, like the 3rd of July, and it took me 3.5 months to finish. I think it's because of the writing style. I was genuinely so interested in the world and the lore, but the way that things were introduced felt so clinical, quite info dumpy. It could not hold my attention for more than a few pages at a time. The male love interest is also so incredibly awkward, and not in a good way. He is so blandly written. He felt like a statue, like a placeholder. I don't know, the whole flow of the story was very slowly paced, but then slow paced stories are okay, but if you're not developing the characters at the same time, then what are you actually talking about, right? So the stakes felt incredibly low, and honestly I ended up not caring at all what happens to our characters, which is sad because this is such a gorgeous book and I really like the premise of the book and the setting of the book. It's just that the writing style was not for me. It was a bit repetitive, also felt a bit disconnected at times. I ended up giving this book 2.5 stars. So that is Shanghai Immortal by A.Y. Chow. The next book that I read, I actually sort of hybrid read because I also listened to this in audiobook. It's City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. Young adult fantasy. This is the third book in the Mortal Instruments series. So even though I know a lot of you have read this series, I still don't want to say too much about it in case someone who hasn't read it will stumble upon this video. So yeah, just know that this is the third book. Mortal Instruments is this whole universe of books on demons and angels and shadow hunters who kills demons. Out of the first three books, this I think is the best in terms of pace and storytelling. There is a lot that could still be improved. It felt a little bit episodic in the sense that there's little tasks that they need to check off, and then after this task they get presented with another task, and the villains here were a bit too caricature-ish to the point it was actually quite funny. It was written in the early 2000s and it shows. I don't really have a lot to say about this except that I'm so incredibly excited to finally move on to the Infernal Devices because that seems to be such a universally loved series within the Shadowhunters universe, and also there's like a well executed love triangle if my sources are correct. So yeah, I give this 3 stars, middle of the road. That is City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. The next book that I read is actually part of this readathon called Vampathon. I have my reading vlog already up, so check in the description box for a link to that. I read What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is a horror book. It's a retelling / expansion of Edgar Allan Poe's Fall of the House of Usher, which I haven't read yet. In the story, Alex Easton, a retired soldier, receives a letter from a dear friend, Madeline Usher. She tells him that she's ill and she's potentially dying. She wants him to come over and visit her in the countryside in this place called Ruritania. When Alex gets there, however, he notices that the manor and the surrounding area is extremely dilapidated, practically overrun with this odd fungal growth and weird acting wildlife. That is where the story starts. I could not be happier that this was my introduction to T. Kingfisher's work. This was so expertly written. She was able to pack in so much atmosphere, character, plot in just 159 pages. Granted, it is a retelling, but I know nothing of the source material, so even though I was new to this story, it still read very well-rounded and complete to me. The setup of the mystery was very subtle. There was this sense of growing dread and terror that you feel as you go through the book, and then it escalates and everything just snaps. The conclusion was so satisfying. I really enjoyed my time reading this. I don't know, I got goosebumps so many times, and I think it was a perfect balance of horror, gothic, and mystery, which I really enjoyed. I gave this 5 stars. 2 5 stars in 1 month. Oh my gosh, this was such a good reading month for me. That is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. The last book that I read for this month is If I Have to Be Hunted by Miranda Sun. This is also the fairyloot special edition. It is pretty. This book is a YA fantasy, and in this story, we are following Kara Tang. She is a Chinese-American high school student, and our girl has ghost-speaking powers. She's kind of caught between her overbearing mother's expectations of being this perfect daughter and her own desire to actually explore this very unique skill that she has. Her mother wants her to like repress this skill and basically forget about it, but she's kind of curious, like it's something special about her, right? Everything changes when she stumbles upon the lifeless body in the woods of this boy called Zach. Zach is basically the golden boy of the school, and he is her number one nemesis. Like, they bicker and fight a lot in school. Because she's a ghost speaker, she's now the only person who is able to see Zach and actually communicate with him and potentially save him. So we go off into this quest to try and resurrect our boy Zach. I need to preface this review by saying that this is a young adult fantasy. I am not a young adult. A lot of things that frustrated me in this book might not apply to you if you are actually within the demographic of the book. The main thing that confused me about this book is that it goes back and forth on the intensity of the characters. One moment they're super petty, as like high school students are, but every now and then the way they talk and express their feelings was too much, to the point that it felt out of place from this story and definitely 100% cringy. I am gonna show you some of my notes from Storygraph, because Storygraph has this reading journal feature. This is gonna be a little bit spoilery because there's like excerpts from the book, nothing that spoils the plot, but skip to this timestamp if you don't want to see that. One of the lines here, Kara was thinking, "It was a kind of smile that had the power to blind her to all else. The kind of smile that built bridges, forged political alliances, unfurled the sails of ships, lethal in its charm." Like, am I too old for this, or was that just super cringy? And then 22%, like literally a few pages after that, they were bickering, and then this is from the POV of Kara. So she was thinking, "And then they were still holding onto old knives, seeing how much they could make the other bleed." Girl, you two are teenagers. I mean, stop being so dramatic. I don't know if that was just me, but yeah. There's also this portion in the book where the characters discuss racism, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but sometimes when it's very randomly placed, it feels quite disingenuous. It feels like it was added there because she is an Asian author and therefore needs to talk about this topic. Honestly, I just wish more authors would weave the narrative into the story itself rather than placing a very like blunt situation randomly in the middle of the book as like an afterthought to sort of like tick the box that this book talks about racism. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I also felt this way about The Charm Offensive. That one is not that it was random, but it was just too much that it felt like it was just trying to like check as many boxes of like representation as it can check. Maybe it's just me. Let me know if you felt differently. I'm happy to converse about this topic. On a lighter note though, I think this book could have benefited from a good old fantasy map. They were talking a lot about this liminal spaces, and they were jumping through different areas of this space, and if there was like a map on the book, it would have been fun to see like where they were traveling to. I thought it was just like a missed opportunity, but yeah. I gave this book 3 stars. If I Have to Be Haunted by A.Y. Chow. And that is it. Those are all of the books that I read in October. I think 8 books is like a good amount for me, and the fact that I have 2 5-star reads is wild to me. Kings of the Wild. Yeah, if you've read any of these books, or if you're curious about any of these books, leave me a comment down below. If you made it to the end, put a shield emoji. I think there's a shield emoji. If not, then put a sword emoji. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Bye!